The Formula One weekend has officially kicked off at the historic Monza circuit, with Ferrari aiming for a strong comeback following the heavy 0-0 suffered at the recent Dutch Grand Prix in Zandvoort. Charles Leclerc delivered a commendable performance during that event, showcasing his skill and determination, but contact with Matteo Antonelli ultimately removed him from contention, preventing the Monegasque driver from converting his pace into a points finish. Lewis Hamilton, meanwhile, faced difficulties of his own during the same race, with what appeared to be a minor driving error causing him to lose valuable track position and hampering his overall performance. The Maranello team is determined to perform at its best in front of its passionate home crowd, who have arrived in large numbers at the Autodromo Nazionale Monza, eager to support the Italian team despite what has so far been a challenging and underwhelming season for the team. Now let's take a detailed look at how events unfolded for the two Ferrari drivers in the first free practice session for the Italian Grand Prix. Small wing differences and early observations. Both Ferrari cars immediately entered action as the session began, taking to the track on medium tires to evaluate the effectiveness and setup of the car prepared by the engineers. The opening laps were relatively cautious, focusing on collecting data and understanding the grip levels offered by the circuit, but even in these initial laps, some challenges became noticeable. In particular, through the two Lesmo corners, the SF25 struggled to maintain its line toward the inside of the corner, often running slightly wider than ideal and remaining at a small distance from the curbs. A similar tendency was observed at the entry to Variante Ascari, where precise steering inputs and careful brake modulation were required to keep the car on the optimal racing line. Traffic on track, combined with a surface that was not yet fully rubbered in from previous sessions, made it challenging for both drivers to assemble a clean lap. Despite these conditions, the SF25 demonstrated a strong top-end speed along the straights, coupled with a reasonably balanced performance in the opening sector, suggesting that the car has a solid aerodynamic foundation. The initial chicanes were negotiated more naturally, particularly by Lewis Hamilton, whose experience and precise driving style allowed him to handle the changes of direction with fluidity. However, performance varied between the two teammates in the middle section of the track, highlighting differences in driving style, brake application, and corner entry approach. These discrepancies could also be linked to the way the drivers managed their tires. Charles Leclerc, for instance, had to utilize a specific brake mapping to control rear brake temperatures, a common strategy to maintain consistent performance over a stint while preventing overheating. Beyond these early indications, both drivers appeared comfortable with the handling characteristics of the SF25, a very encouraging sign for the rest of the weekend. Meanwhile, the engineers on the pit wall remained fully engaged, providing continuous guidance and feedback to refine each driver's approach, corner by corner, lap after lap. Charles Leclerc was specifically asked to improve the final braking phase at the first variante, paying particular attention to how he releases the brake pedal before transitioning smoothly onto the accelerator. Similar guidance was given for the Roggia chicane, where he could afford to brake a few meters later to carry more speed through the corner. Lewis Hamilton also had identifiable areas for improvement, particularly in the second and third sectors, where small adjustments in braking, steering, and throttle application could yield better lap times. The first stint of the session concluded after approximately 10 laps, marking a positive and productive start to the weekend for both drivers and offering important data for the team to analyze. Following a brief stop in the pit lane, both Ferrari cars returned to the circuit to continue their session. Charles Leclerc was the first to resume track activity, while Lewis Hamilton stayed in the garage to complete a quick rear wing change, allowing him to test a different level of downforce and assess how it affected balance and cornering stability. As planned, the Monegasque driver used his outlap to maintain a consistent pace, evaluating the aerodynamic resistance of the SF25 and collecting crucial telemetry for the engineers. Before the Parabolica corner, Charles Leclerc switched the car into push mode, initiating his second run with maximum focus and intensity. However, his lap was abruptly interrupted by a red flag caused by Isaac Hadjar's off-track excursion at Ascari. This incident occurred precisely as Leclerc had registered a very strong intermediate time, making the stoppage particularly frustrating. Race control took note that car number 16 did not immediately lift off the throttle at Roggia while passing Nico Hülkenberg, which prompted a request for clarification regarding the maneuver. The Monegasque driver explained that he was in the middle of a full flying lap, reacting as quickly and appropriately as possible given the circumstances. Following a short review, the stewards decided not to open any further investigation, thus avoiding a potential penalty that could have impacted his weekend. Approximately 10 minutes later, the track was reopened, and both Ferrari drivers resumed their work on soft tires, focusing in particular on improving their approach to the first corner and maximizing their braking efficiency. Some minor adjustments made directly from the steering wheel helped both drivers manage braking more effectively and optimize rotation through the center of the corners. Charles Leclerc completed a fast lap, though he ran slightly long at Variante Ascari, brushing against the gravel and losing precious time in the microsectors. However, he benefited from a strong slipstream in the opening sector, which gave him an advantage of about 0.2 of a second. Lewis Hamilton closed his lap with a strong performance as well, although he was slightly slower than his teammate, with evident areas to improve in the second and third sectors of the track. On his subsequent attempt, Lewis Hamilton found improved balance in his driving, allowing him to extract more performance from the SF25. While still slower than Charles Leclerc in the first sector, Hamilton posted the fastest times in both the second and third sectors, signaling clearly that the Ferrari responds very well to fine-tuning and confirming the team's expectations for the opening practice sessions in Monza. Despite the positive pace, a limit in rotation remained evident, particularly through the two Lesmo corners, making the central sector a technically demanding section for the SF25. Nonetheless, both drivers managed the sector convincingly, leaving the team with positive feedback and confidence in the car's overall behavior. Shortly afterward, a simulation of race pace was initiated to evaluate tire performance and fuel consumption, but the run was interrupted by a double yellow flag situation. The stoppage was caused by George Russell, who was forced to stop before Roggia due to a sudden drop in power, requiring immediate intervention from the marshals. This incident marked the conclusion of the first practice session of the Italian Grand Prix, leaving Ferrari in a strong position at the top of the timesheets. The team demonstrated a promising technical base, combining aerodynamic efficiency with strong mechanical balance, giving both Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton the tools needed to tackle the rest of the weekend competitively. Both drivers also conducted start simulations, an important element in fine-tuning clutch settings and launch procedures ahead of qualifying and the race. They took time to acknowledge the enthusiastic fans, waving to the grandstands and expressing appreciation for the continued support. With the SF25 performing well under early conditions, Ferrari looks set to carry this momentum into FP2, where further insights into tire behavior, fuel loads, and setup adjustments will be key to solidifying their performance ahead of qualifying and the race. Overall, the opening session at Monza highlighted Ferrari's determination to recover from recent setbacks, showcasing both strong pace and promising consistency from Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton. The SF25 appears to provide a solid foundation to build upon, and with careful management of tires, braking, and aerodynamic balance, the Maranello team may once again become a formidable presence at its home Grand Prix in Italy. Both drivers and engineers will continue to work closely, analyzing data lap by lap, ensuring that the car's behavior is optimized for the high-speed nature of the historic Monza circuit, while keeping an eye on rivals, with McLaren clearly not showing its true potential for now. The session offered a valuable preview of Ferrari's potential, revealing areas for improvement as well as strengths to exploit. With adjustments to tire strategies, wing settings, and braking points, Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton are poised to extract further performance from the SF25. Monza, with its long straights, high-speed corners, and iconic history, provides a perfect backdrop for the team to demonstrate their skills, creating anticipation for what promises to be an exciting Italian Grand Prix weekend for Ferrari fans and Formula One enthusiasts alike.